Welcome. Today I will be reading a chapter from an ABC of Witchcraft by Doreen Valiente. I hope I pronounced everything correctly. I'm not a professor or an expert. And here is the book that I am reading from. I have some incense burning and a black candle. This book can be found on Amazon and eBay. I am on page 51, and we're reading about Baphomet. As you know, this book is somewhat of an alphabetical definition of what she understood as witchcraft at that time. This book was written in 1973. So as you can see, many of the items in here still come to bear in society. I am by no means an expert at witchcraft, nor am I an expert at reading or English for that matter. So I apologize for any mistakes I make. Baphomet. This name was given to the statue of a mysterious deity alleged to be worshipped by the Knights Templars. The latter, although a powerful and wealthy order of chivalry, came to be distrusted by church and state at the beginning of the 14th century and were disbanded. They were accused of heresy, of worshipping the devil in the guise of Baphomet, and of practicing homosexuality. The order was put down with the utmost severity, and its Grand Master, Jacques de Molay, burned at the stake. It has been suggested that the word Baphomet was really a version of Mahomet, and that the Templars, from their connections with the East, had secretly become Mohammedans. This widely accepted explanation is, however, absurd. Nothing could be more repugnant and nor more strictly forbidden to anyone who had really embraced Islam than to make a graven image of either Allah or the Prophet Muhammad. The accounts given of this mysterious statue by the accused Templars when they were brought to trial are confused. Some of their evidence was extracted under torture by people who were determined to get evidence that the Templars were secret devil worshippers. Sometimes the image was said to be simply a head, but of terrifying aspect, and sometimes merely a bare skull. But another account told of the figure being worshipped by kissing its feet. Sometimes it is described as bearded and like a demon. But it is also described as being like a woman. It was generally agreed, however, that the image, or what it represented, was worshipped, and that it was regarded as the giver of abundance and fertility. In 1816, a distinguished antiquarian, Baron Joseph von Hammer-Purgstall, published a book entitled Mysterium Baphometis Revelatum, in which he gave his opinion that the Knights Templars really were secret heretics, or Gnostics, as he called them. He based this opinion upon certain very curious relics of 19th century art, consisting chiefly of statuettes, coffers, and cups or goblets. These contain mysterious figures, which are evidently pagan, and correspond to the descriptions of Baphomet secretly worshipped by the Templars. That is, the figures are androgynous, bearded, but with female breasts, or otherwise showing the characteristics of both sexes, and often with the skull at the feet, and displaying the magical sigil of the pentagram. Sometimes inscriptions in Arabic accompany the figures. But their sense is deliberately obscure. These images have certain things in common with the deities of the witches. They are sources of life and fertility, and they are associated with the symbols of the skull and the five-pointed star. Their sexual characteristics are emphasized, as were those of Pan and the goddess of nature. Their generally pagan appearance would certainly have caused the medieval church to regard them as devils. Thomas Wright, in his essays on the worship of the generative powers during the Middle Ages of Western Europe, gives his opinion that the comparison of facts stated in the confessions of many of the Templars, as preserved in the official reports, with the images and sculptured cups and coffers given by von Hammer-Purgstall, leads to the conclusion that there is truth in the explanation he gives of the latter, and that the Templars, or at least some of them, had secretly adopted a form of the rites of Gnosticism, which was itself founded upon the phallic worship of the ancients. An English Templar, Stephen de Stapleburg, acknowledged that there were two professions in the order of the Temple, the first lawful and good, the second contrary to the faith. He had been admitted to the first of these when he entered the order 11 years before the time of his examination, but he was only initiated into the second or inner mysteries about a year afterwards. The existence of an inner circle within an order or society of some kind is a frequent means of occult organization. Many such orders within orders exist at the present day. In medieval times, the devil was often regarded as being androgynous. The card called the devil in the old pack of the Tarot de Marseille represents him thus, and the old English word scrat meant both a devil and a hermaphrodite. The old scrat is still a dialect term for the devil. The distinguished 19th century French occultist Eliphas Levi declared Baphomet of the Templars to be identical with the god of the witches, Sabbat. It was not the figure of a devil, however, but of the god Pan, or rather a pantheistic symbol of the whole of nature. The word Baphomet, when written backwards, Kabbalistically, reveals three abbreviations: Tem, Of, Ab, Tem, OHP, AB, which stand for Templi Omnium Hominum Pacus Abbas, the Father of the Temple of Universe Peace among men. This explanation may sound somewhat far-fetched, but Eliphas Levi was in touch with secret occult fraternities which preserved traditional knowledge, though he often wrote in an obscure and devious style, being anxious not to give too much offense to the Catholic Church. There is a very curious and interesting carving in the Church of Sainte Marie in France, which is traditionally said to be a representation of Baphomet. It is a horned and winged figure, bearded but having female breasts, and it sits cross-legged, rather like the old Gaulish figures of the Celtic horned god Cernunnos. The idea that God, containing all things, was therefore androgynous is a very ancient and widespread one. It occurs in the collection of magical legends of the witches of Italy, which Charles Godfrey Leland published as Aradia, the Gospel of the Witches. In this, the legend of Diana states, Diana was the first created before all creation. In her were all things. Out of herself, the first darkness, she divided herself. Into darkness and light she was divided. Lucifer, her brother and son, herself and her other half was light. The same idea occurs in the mystical symbolism of the Kabbalah. The Sephiroth, or divine emanations from the unmanifest, which are arranged as a Kabbalistic tree of life, represent the attributes of God, and of these some are male and some female. S. L. MacGregor Mathers in the Kabbalah Unveiled has pointed out how the translators of the Bible have smothered up and glossed over every reference to the fact that God is both masculine and feminine. This was, of course, done to establish the patriarchal conception of God the Father, with femininity regarded, after the Pauline fashion, as something inferior, if not actually evil. However, in the ancient East, the highest deities were sometimes represented in androgynous form. Such figures were called Brahma, Ardhanarisa, or Shiva, Ardhanarisa. The Syrian god Baal was sometimes represented as double-sexed, and old accounts tell us that his worshippers called upon him thus, Hear us, Baal, whether thou be god or goddess. Mithras was sometimes referred to as androgynous, and the Greek Dionysus even more frequently so. One of his titles was Diphios, meaning double-sexed. The Orphic hymns sing of Zeus, the supreme god of nature, in the same way as man and as virgin eternal. Goddesses, too, were sometimes regarded in the ancient world as double-sexed, in particular the most supposedly feminine of them all, Venus or Aphrodite. In Cyprus, a strange image of Venus was worshipped, bearded and masculine, but dressed in female attire. At the festivals of this worship, transvestism was practiced, women wearing men's clothes and men dressing as women. Similar festivals honored the goddess Astarte, and it is interesting to note that transvestism was condemned by the Christian Church, which associated it with witchcraft. There seems no particular reason why transvestism should be regarded as wicked. When one comes to think of it, it is probable that the real cause of the Christian and Old Testament denunciations of the practice lies in the fact that it was a custom carried out in honor of pagan deities. The figure of Baphomet, therefore, is connected with worship of great antiquity, the depth and widespread nature of which have been little realized, on account of the veil which has been drawn over these matters. Only in the present day has this veil of pudeur begun to be lifted, when people have come to realize that the obscenity of the old nature worship was mostly in the eye of the beholder. Thank you for listening, and I hope to bring another chapter from this wonderful book coming soon. Have a blessed day.